was like a personal moment with my family that kind of jumped out at me last night, because I think it was because of Kyle's presentation yesterday. Got this, Kyle? So I'm on the phone with my daughter, and you know, she's like 9 and all this, and I told some of you this story, and what was her big question, because I took the iPad for 3 days? How much battery is in the iPad? So it's kind of pitiful, but I got to get that iPad back, and it better be charged, God damn it. So I'm going to introduce our morning keynote, Brian Madden, who's the head of audience development and social media at Hearst Digital. Brian was saying that, you know, in some ways, I think his, you know, that his talk, you know, kind of is sort of what, the sequel to yesterday's keynote from Jennifer Winberg at Momentum. He's really going to talk about, you know, the need to build a real social persona if you really want this content that you're creating to actually, you know, get shared and all that. It kind of helps if you have a voice. So with that, I'm going to just invite Brian up. Please give him your early morning applause. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, everyone, for letting me come up and talk to you about leveraging fans to distribute our content. So about a year ago, Hearst Digital formed a social media team. Previously, obviously, we were doing a lot in social, but we sort of identified a small, tiny group of 4 people across all of our brands to sort of focus exclusively on social and moving the needle forward. You know, and what we did first was try to figure out, well, what was our goal in social? And what we found was that we wanted to see if we could get basically use social as a way to grow our site audience. So we set a goal of getting to about 10% of our traffic to our sites from social. We were at this time last year, we were at about 2 to 3%. So the goal by the end of this year to about right now is to grow that from 2 or 3% to 10%. So I'm going to sort of, you know, before I jump into how we did that and what was involved in it, you know, I just kind of wanted to share a slide on the power of sharing. And some of you may want to look away if you were out drinking too much last night, but this is a piece of content that basically we had about 6 people tweet this article from our site, and we had about 14 people share this article on Facebook, and that was it. Those 20 shares actually generated about 52,000 referrals to our site. So, you know, it just sort of shows the power of a share and how much it can generate. And it's fun pictures to look at right after breakfast. So distributing content socially. You know, what we wanted to do is basically use social as a form of content distribution. And the first thing we thought of, well, is it okay to use social to distribute content? Should we just be having conversations with our users and our fans on social, or is it sort of acceptable to share a lot of content? And we quickly found out that sharing content was one of the main reasons why people were following us. They wanted to get the latest news, they wanted to get the latest information, they wanted to get the latest trends and tips. You know, so we quickly figured that out, but we also realized that it couldn't just be, obviously, it couldn't just be an RSS feed of our content. We needed to have a voice, we needed to have an opinion, we needed to make things interesting to kind of entertain people while they're sharing our content. And then we also, you know, realized that, you know, we have to interact with our users. We have to kind of communicate with them. But I think what we also learned quickly was that, you know, if you spent all of your time interacting with the fans, it's a full-time job, and, you know, you sort of have to weigh the cost-benefit of that. Like, do we want to basically interact with our fans, or do we have to kind of find the right fans to interact with, the influencers, the celebrities, the other editors and publishers that we deal with? So, you know, it was something that, you know, we basically had to figure out and make sure we understood who we were talking to, when, and how much time we should spend talking to them. And then also we realized, you know, a lot of sort of the content we were creating was optimized for search, and things that are optimized for search aren't necessarily optimized for social. So we spent a lot of time analyzing what sort of content on our site people were sharing, and what was generating a lot of traffic back. So, you know, there were two issues that were happening. A lot of people were sharing things, and then a lot of some of this, like the example you just saw, maybe a lot of people didn't really share it, but it drove a lot of traffic back to our site. And again, since our goal was to sort of drive traffic and increase our sort of overall traffic from social, we focused on what sort of content is generating the most traffic back to our site. And then finally, make it easy for people to share. We sort of did an audit of our sites to determine where the best placement for the share button was, the like button, tweet, Google+, pin it button, making sure all of those tools were on the site in the right place. And then finally, something that we're thinking about for 2013 is, we feel like maybe we figured out how to get our brands to be as social as they can. So sort of our focus for 2013 is to figure out how to get our followers and our fans and our site visitors to be social for us. And so I'll share at the end of this presentation something that we're launching next week that we're really excited about. It's an Open Graph 2.0 implementation. It's not a social reader. Obviously, those don't work, but we're really excited about it, and we're hoping it's going to really encourage our audience to share a lot more of what they see on our sites. So here are the results before I get into some of the tactics that we took. This goes back to the beginning of 2001, and you can see this is basically traffic to our site from the different social platforms. Red is Pinterest, which isn't too surprising. It sort of took off about halfway through the year. So it sort of, thankfully, it helped us get to our goal of 10%. We're about 9.2% in January. So we went from 2.5% to 3% to between 9 and 10%. The other sort of social networks you can see that have grown as well. Twitter, we actually, for the longest time, we had trouble figuring out, well, how do we get people to come to our site from Twitter? And I think we figured out some good tactics there, which I'll share with you. And then Facebook was sort of always the biggest, and then it sort of, once Pinterest exploded and Twitter took off, it actually started to fall down, and we've sort of recovered in January, and we've had a record month for both Pinterest, Twitter, and Facebook in January. So Twitter, the thing that we discovered, and this is kind of interesting from a magazine publisher standpoint, is what we know works on our covers actually works really well on Twitter. Creating what we're calling the cover line technique. So something that is a really good and successful cover line that draws people in on the newsstand will actually draw them in to click on your links and go to your site. The tweets are direct calls to action that elicit emotion, and specifically fear, pleasure, or curiosity. So when we think of fear, it's what will happen if I don't click on the link. And these are actual examples of tweets that Cosmo did. And I always love to use Cosmo as an example when I'm giving a presentation because it's always fun. So these 7 foods can seriously affect your sex drive. Pleasure, what's the benefit? 9 little ways to be a freaking amazing girlfriend. And curiosity, what's the hook? Craziest wedding dresses ever. 15 gowns so beyond heinous they're actually insane, which is one of my favorite tweets of all time. And the other thing that's funny about this I didn't notice until I was reviewing this presentation today is the odd numbers in the tweets, which I think someone said yesterday that odd numbers actually perform better than even numbers. So we didn't know that, but we were doing it, which is great. For Facebook was a little bit more of a challenge to figure out how do we